If you want to know what a life weighs, listen to the sound a cheap kitchen phone makes at 3 in the morning. It doesn't ring so much as stab. It will slice the dark open and make you look at everything you've been pretending not to see, what you lost, what you failed to do, what still might be buried out there waiting on your name. The phone stabbed at Darius Coleman in the narrow kitchen of his row house in West Baltimore, the kind of place where the floor groaned and the window AC rattled like an old truck. Rain shouldered the glass, steady and mean. He had fallen asleep sitting up at the table, boots on, grease under the nails he scrubbed every night and never fully got clean. The television in the living room still muttered the midnight replay of a Ravens game, Baltimore's colors washing the walls a dull, tired purple. He answered on the third ring, voice stuck in his chest. "Yeah, Mr. Coleman," a man, calm official. "Detective Ethan Rowland, Baltimore Police Department." Darius's mouth went dry. He hadn't heard a cop use his name in years. The last time they told him there was nothing more they could do. What happened? A beat, rain, a siren far off like a bad memory. "I'm calling about your sister, Naomi." He didn't breathe for 2 whole seconds. He could count them. He could count everything from that summer to now, 23 years of counting and still coming up short. "You find her. We found remains this afternoon in Gwynns Falls, Leakin Park during a survey. A hiker, actually. Items at the scene. We have reason to believe they're connected to your sister's case. We need you to come down." He closed his eyes. Leakin Park, 4,500 acres of beauty and ghosts, too many families who knew the name like a wound. "You sure it's her? We're not making a formal ID over the phone, Mr. Coleman, but there's a journal and a pendant, the initials match. Naomi Elise Coleman. A silver pendant she got for $18 at a flea market when she turned 16, initials etched crooked, a chain that pinched her hair. She wore it like it was Tiffany. He remembered teasing her about it, and she'd kissed her fingers and tapped the letters as if she could bless her way through West Baltimore with nothing but good sense and a stubborn smile. He swallowed. "Where do you want me?" "The city morgue opens at 6. I can meet you there earlier if you'd prefer." Darius looked at the microwave clock blinking 3:07 like it was stuck in a loop. "I'll be there." "Mr. Coleman," Rowland added softly, "I'm sorry about the hour." "Hour's fine," Darius said, already picturing the drive. "It's 23 years I ain't fine with." He hung up and stood there, palms on the laminate counter scarred by years of hot pans and bad coffee. The house was too quiet for the noise going off inside him. He wanted to hit something. He wanted to wake the whole block and make the city listen to his sister's name. Instead, he turned the faucet on full, shoved his hands under the stream, and scrubbed at the grease like it was guilt. In the bedroom down the hall, his mother stirred and coughed once, a thin, papery sound. Clara Coleman had made a life of little coughs and big prayers. He'd moved her into his place after her knees went bad. He ought to wake her. He ought to tell her himself. But he also remembered the last time he said Naomi's name at this hour and how Clara had sank into a chair and never stood the same again. He dried his hands on a dish towel gone stiff from age and walked to the doorway of his mother's room. Light from the street cut blinds across her face. She slept with her hands folded at her chest like a woman bracing for landing. He stood there feeling 12 years old and not good enough at the very things he was supposed to be good at, showing up, protecting, fixing what breaks. He went back to the kitchen, pulled the cord on the back door, and stepped out onto the small stoop. The alley smelled like wet asphalt and old oil. A cat dashed under the neighbor's car. Somewhere a radio murmured gospel at the wrong volume. West Baltimore didn't sleep. It dozed with one eye open. His phone buzzed again, a text this time from an unknown number, then a second. He opened them. "Unknown, this is Detective Rowland. If you drive now, text me when you're close. I'll meet you in the lobby. Unknown, bring someone if you can." "You shouldn't be alone for this." Darius stared at the screen. He had people, guys from the shop, 2 cousins spread between Edmondson Avenue and Park Heights, a woman he saw sometimes who liked him better before he said he wasn't built for defining things. But there were some halls a man had to walk by himself. He sent back, coming alone. The rain let up just enough to make a decision feel like it might hold. Darius pulled on his denim jacket, the one with the deep pocket where he kept his sister's last photo. Son behind her, hair up, eyes sharp enough to cut through shortcuts and excuses. He slid the picture out just enough to see the corner of her smile, then tucked it away again, like tucking away a breath. The drive east felt shorter than it should. At this hour, Baltimore's arteries unclench, Pratt Street goes glossy and empty, and the inner harbor looks like it belongs to nobody. He passed Charles Street, the lighted hill of the monument rising like a candle. He rolled by a billboard for a law firm, two white, blonde men in the kind of suits you could rent a row house for, beneath the words "We fight for the injured." Darius snorted. He knew which injured got the full weight of that fight. He parked 2 blocks from the office of the chief medical examiner to avoid the meter maids who, in his neighborhood, could materialize from mist. A city truck hissed by. The air had that cold metal smell cities get before dawn, like the whole place had been scrubbed inside. Detective Rowland was waiting in the lobby, tall and broad in an off-the-rack suit that hung as if it meant well. Mid-40s, salt along the beard, eyes that looked like they de-argued with sleep and lost. He extended a hand. "Mr. Coleman, Darius." Rowland's grip was firm but not trying to prove anything. "Ethan," he said, like he'd been taught to level the ground between cop and citizen, "I wish we were meeting under different circumstances." Darius let the words pass. "You sure it's her?" "We won't say sure until the lab says sure," Rowland replied, "but there's enough to believe you should see what we found." He nodded toward double doors. "Before we go back, I need to prepare you. What you'll see will be, it won't be your sister the way you remember her." "I remember her fine," Darius said. "What I don't remember is any of you moving fast when it would have mattered." Rowland held the look, took it like he had a pocket for blame. "I joined the department in 06, he said. "I pulled your sister's file when I got into cold cases last year. I can't fix what happened then, I can try to do right now." The man didn't flinch. Darius respected that more than he wanted to. He nodded once. "Let's go." They moved through a corridor that hummed with refrigerated air. On the walls, flyers about chain of custody, posters with 20-year-old faces and tired offering rewards, a bulletin board of missing names like a choir of unfinished songs. Naomi's black and white flyer was up there too, the one Darius had tacked to telephone poles until his fingers bled. Seeing it still pinned and neat made him feel both seen and invisible. In a small room off the corridor, Rowland laid a clear evidence bag on a stainless table. Inside was a silver pendant dulled by time, initials E and C crooked and tender the way the flea market man had scratched them with a tool that sang against metal. Darius set his hands on the table to stop them from shaking. "That hers?" Rowland asked, voice softer now. Darius didn't trust his voice. He nodded, then he cleared his throat. "Yeah, that's Naomi's." Rowland placed a second bag beside it. A narrow spiral-bound notebook, the cover warped, pages snarled with mud. It was near the site. "We haven't opened it yet. We'll do that with gloves and a camera." But the name inside the front cover reads Naomi E. Coleman. The date on the title page is June 2002. "Don't read it without me." It came out harder than he intended. "I want to be there when you do." Rowland hesitated just long enough to be honest. "We can coordinate that." Somewhere in the building, a cooler door thunked shut. Darius's heart kept pace with the fluorescent hum. He remembered how Naomi had loved notebooks, lists and sketches and quotes from whatever book she was reading from the library's cast-offs. He remembered her saying she would be a lawyer one day, that she'd fight men who thought they owned the world, and he remembered laughing like a fool and telling her to start with their landlord. Rowland gestured to a chair. "Before we go farther, I need to ask some questions. Some are old, things you've probably answered before, but details shift with time. Sometimes people remember something when the air changes." He paused. "Can you talk now?" Darius stared at the pendant. "Ask, detective. Tell me about the day she left." He did. He told him about the heat that stuck to skin and the way Naomi had said she needed a walk in the park to clear her head before helping their mother with dinner. He told him about the time she turned at the door and mouthed, "Love you," like it was a habit meant to be kept. and he told him about how the patrol car didn't arrive until after midnight when he'd called at 9, and how the officers had said, "She's probably with friends," as if poor black girls only ever got lost in their own bad decisions. Roland took notes without the cop's usual garnish of skepticism. He asked about men in Naomi's orbit, about odd calls, about the arguments she'd had that spring with someone Darius couldn't place, a name that had tasted like money and entitlement when Naomi spit it out. Darius shook his head until the name he'd avoided for years rose like oil. Hale, Vincent Hale. Roland glanced up, something keen passing through his eyes. "You're sure?" "I'm sure of what it felt like in the room when she said it," Darius replied. "That boy's last name came with a doorman." Roland closed the notebook. "Okay," he said, more to himself than to Darius. "Okay." Darius stood before the chair could claim him. "Show me the place," he said. "Where you found her. I need to stand there." Roland studied him, measure and worry and respect all weighing the same. "It's rough ground," he warned, "and it's still a scene, but if you can handle it, I'll take you." Darius looked at the pendant again, at the crooked letters that once grazed his sister's throat. He thought of Clara asleep in his back bedroom, hands folded, bracing for impact. He thought of that billboard with men who promised to fight and wondered what a fight without cameras and donors looked like. "I've handled worse," he said. Roland nodded and picked up the evidence bags, cradling them like they weighed a life. "Let's go," he said. Outside, dawn was a thin bruise along the horizon, the city's bones showing. The rain had stopped but left behind a shine like sweat on every surface. Darius followed Roland to the unmarked sedan, buckled in, and watched Baltimore slide by, solid brick and busted glass, storefront churches and corner bars, beauty and ruin laid side by side like before and after photos in a magazine nobody read. He pressed 2 fingers to the denim over his chest, to the shape of the photo in the pocket. "Hang on, Naomi," he whispered so low it was only for himself and whatever still listened in this city. "I'm coming." Roland's sedan nosed along Edmondson Avenue, wipers tut-tutting at the last of the rain, and the city outside Darius's window turned into a moving mirror where one face kept appearing, Naomi's. 19 years old and sure of what she would and wouldn't stand for. The car's heater clicked, the kind of low mechanical thrum a man who fixed things could feel in his ribs, and with it came the day he'd tried for 23 years to unspool clean. It never did. Memory kinked and snagged on the smallest things, a cracked Formica table, a grocery list, the price of chicken thighs in 2002. "Start when you're ready," Roland said, eyes on traffic, pencil ready on his knee like he'd practiced writing on a moving target. "It was hot," Darius said. "That's what I remember first, June heat that stuck to you like debt." The morning had opened with a cheap fan rattling on the dresser and the smell of coffee. Clara stretched with a splash of hot water, make it last coffee. Darius had the radio on real low, the Orioles' noon game preview drifting through the kitchen, and Naomi lined on the counter in a thrifted Maryland t-shirt, reading a paperback with a broken spine. She liked to underline things and argue with the margins. "You working through lunch, big brother?" she asked, nodding at his toolbox. "Roadside alternator swap on a Civic," he said, lacing up boots. "Man says it dies every time he hits a light, wants it fixed for 50. Naomi smirked. "People will pay more to keep lying to themselves than to fix the truth. Charge him 75. You studying to be a lawyer or a mechanic? Both, so I can sue myself when I mess up." Clara came in with her housecoat tied crooked and her voice already carrying a prayer. "Lord, let this day be ordinary," she said, then smiled at it because ordinary was a luxury in their zip code. "Naomi, you take that walk, be back by 5. I want your hands on that chicken before the grease gets ideas." Naomi saluted with the book. "Yes, ma'am." She started walking Druid Hill when finals ended, miles around the reservoir under trees older than any of them, where she said her mind could stretch into shapes the neighborhood wouldn't allow. "I think better when the air is bigger," she told Darius. He'd given her a whistle and a can of pepper spray he kept in a drawer next to rubber bands and old batteries. She kissed his cheek, the quick peck of a kid who still believed in coming back, and tucked the silver pendant inside her shirt. "Want me to roll with you?" he asked, the kind of offer a brother makes to prove he's the right kind of brother. Naomi shook her head. "I got this. Anyway, you can't keep up. Girl, I keep engines up. I can keep up with you." She laughed, said, "Love you," like she always did, and was out the door, the screen complaining behind her. He spent the day under the sun, the Civic's hood open and the owner hovering, a man who kept saying, "You sure it's the alternator?" like he wanted the answer to be cheaper. Darius finished it for 70, split the difference, and stopped at Royal Farms for a black coffee and a bag of Utz, shaking Old Bay into the bag like a blessing. He checked his Nokia, no missed calls. At 3:40 he texted Naomi on the old pay-as-you-go plan they split. "You good?" No answer. The tower by the park was temperamental. Texts sometimes took the scenic route. At 5:10 Clara called. "She's not here," she said, voice tight against the edges of the kitchen. "You hear from her? Probably stopped by Nia's place," he said, meaning Naomi's best friend from the library who lived off Park Heights. "I'll swing by the park just in case." He drove past the Safeway where the cashiers knew his mother's coupons by name, up toward the green that made you forget for a second your rent was a half-lie. The reservoir caught late light and flung it back. A lady in scrubs power-walked with her hair wrapped in a scarf that matched her shoes. A kid sold bottled water from a cooler, $1 in a voice too sweet for hustling. Darius parked crooked, didn't care, and took the loop Naomi liked clockwise, the way she always took it, superstitious and practical. An older man sat on a bench with a chessboard and an opinion. "You lookin' for something or lookin' lost?" he asked without looking up. "My sister," Darius said. Naomi, about 5'6", hair up, talks like she wrote the dictionary but knows better words. The man hummed. "Saw a girl like that round two. She was arguing with somebody in chinos. Who wears chinos to the park? Chinos looked mad because her mouth worked. She didn't like what he was selling." "Selling what?" "His face, his name, something like that." "Where?" "By the boathouse." He pointed with a bishop. "You ought to call the police, but they move slow unless you light a fire with money." Darius moved faster. At the boathouse, a teenage couple made out like the world was ending. A woman with a stroller read a legal pad. Two guys with a tackle box argued about bait with the tenderness of a long marriage. On the ground near the steps, Darius found a crushed roe faux cup and a receipt from a coffee stand by the zoo, $2. 75 iced coffee, extra syrup, a note scribbled on the back in Naomi's slanted hand, "VH again." I said no, VH again. His stomach turned itself over. He called Nia. "She texted me at 1, Nia said, voice quick with worry. "Said some rich boy from a community meeting wouldn't quit. Vincent, Vance, I told her come to my place. She said she'd swing by after her lap. You at the park?" "Yeah, I'll call everyone. You call the cops." He did. He gave the dispatcher everything: name, height, shirt color, pendant, the time of the last text that never landed, the receipt, the initials. "We'll send a patrol car," the woman said, working down a list. "People her age sometimes." He cut her off. "Don't do that," he said. "Don't make her a cliché. She's on time like it pays." The patrol rolled up close to 10, lights off, windows down as if stealth were part of care. 2 officers, one veteran with a look that said he'd married and divorced this city twice, one rookie with a jaw that hadn't learned to unclench. The older one took notes and offered nothing. The younger one tried a smile that didn't reach policy. "Any chance she left with a boyfriend?" the veteran asked. "She had a boyfriend exactly once," Darius said. "He came to the house with roses and left with my foot." "Any history of depression?" "She had a history of not tolerating nonsense." "Sometimes people." "She's not people," Darius snapped. "She's Naomi." The older cop let the silence lay between them like a throw rug you could trip on. "We'll put out a bolo," he said at last. "You should go home in case she calls." "She has a key," Darius said. "Home can find her without me." They walked the loop together, Clara in slippers despite Darius's protest, Nia in a hoodie and tears, 2 cousins who'd heard and come running, a deacon from church who offered to pray and then did so loudly, as if God had bad reception in the park. They called Naomi's name until it felt like they were whittling it down. At midnight, under a street lamp that made every face look suspect, the older cop said, "We've done what we can tonight." The younger added, "We'll be in touch," in a way that sounded like, "Don't call us." Darius wanted to break something that wouldn't make his mother cry. He took out his wallet instead and counted the bills, $46, and handed 20 to the kid with the cooler. "You see her, you call me," he said, pressing his number into the boy's damp palm. "You get 50 more if you're first." The boy nodded, solemn like a man. "I got you." By 2 a.m., the park emptied into the kind of quiet you only hear when you're listening for the wrong thing. Darius sat on the curb by his car with Nia beside him, the receipt between his fingers, the initials VH again dug into ink and skin. He thought of the community meeting in April, the one about revitalization, where Naomi stood up and told men in suits that their math didn't add up for the people who already lived in the buildings they wanted to activate. He remembered a young man with a last name that sounded like it had sidewalks baked into it approaching her afterward, smiling with all his teeth and none of his conscience. "Hale," he said aloud. "Vincent Hale." Nia looked up. "You know him?" "I know his father's billboards," Darius said, "and I know that boys' shoes cost more than my rent." He called the number from a trifled brochure left on a folding chair at that meeting. "Hale Development, we build community." An assistant answered and said Mr. Vincent was unavailable at this hour, like decency kept bankers' hours. Darius left a message that didn't bother with courtesy. When he finally drove home, the sun was hinting it might consider another day. Clara sat at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a mug that had lost its handle years ago. "You find her?" she asked. "No," he said, and the word cracked like a plate, "but I found a name." Clara closed her eyes. "Lord, you hear that name," she murmured, "and do what names do, face it." In Roland's sedan, 23 years later, Darius exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since then. "That's the day," he said quietly. "That's how it started, with a walk, a receipt, and a name with a doorman." Roland's knuckles tightened on the wheel. "We're almost there," he said, turning onto Franklin Town Road. "You'll show me where you found that receipt. And then we'll go find out what your city did with the rest." The morgue's lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and burnt coffee, a sterile kind of scent that clung to your clothes and made you feel like you walked into the wrong end of a memory. Darius sat stiff in one of the hard plastic chairs, staring at the gray floor tiles that reflected the overhead fluorescence like broken mirrors. His fists were knotted on his knees. His body felt too heavy for the chair, like grief had turned him into stone. Roland leaned against the counter, murmuring with the receptionist, while a uniformed attendant prepared paperwork. The whole place had that bureaucratic hum, a rhythm of forms, files, signatures that made the dead seem like just another transaction. Then the doors hissed open behind him. "Darius," his mother's voice fragile but firm. He turned and there she was, Clara Coleman, small in her long black coat, hair wrapped in a faded scarf, leaning hard on her cane. Her eyes were glassy, not from tears, but from years of being told to wait for answers that never came. "Ma," he stood, surprised. "I told you I'd handle this." "You don't handle this alone," Clara said. "That was my daughter. My blood. You think I'd let you walk into this place and carry it all on your back?" "Ma, it's not. Don't tell me what it's not," she snapped. "You always think you gotta protect me. I already outlived your father. I already buried too many dreams in this city. You think seeing a box of bones is what's gonna break me?" The words hit like stones. He dropped his eyes. "I didn't want you to. I know what you didn't want," she said. "But what I want is to stand here when they tell us the truth. I want to look her in the eye, even if it's only a piece of her left." Roland approached, cautious, respectful. "Mrs. Coleman," he said, "I'm Detective Roland. I'll walk you through this as gently as possible." Clara gave him a curt nod. "Detective, I don't need gentle. I need honesty, no more of that 'maybe she ran away' talk, no more 'she'll turn up.' I want straight words." Roland's jaw tightened. "You'll get them." A few minutes later, they stood in the viewing room, separated by glass. On the steel table lay what was left, fragments of bone, a tattered shirt sleeve, the pendant resting in a small evidence tray. It was Naomi, the way she had been, laughing, sharp, alive. It was the cruel finality of time, reduced and silent. Clara pressed her palm against the glass. "That's my baby." Her voice didn't break, it dropped, deep and certain like a gavel. Darius had prepared himself for tears. He hadn't prepared for the silence that followed, the way his mother's shoulders squared as though she was standing in court. He felt small beside her, like the 12-year-old boy who'd failed to stop the world from taking what it wanted. Back in the lobby, Roland laid out the journal in a clear sleeve. "We'll open this formally tomorrow," he explained, with evidence text. "But you should know it's hers. Dates line up with the summer she disappeared." Clara pointed at the sleeve. "That book is her voice. Don't you keep it locked in some cabinet until we're gray and gone. She wrote in there for us." "I'll make sure you're included in the process," Roland said. Darius stayed quiet, staring at the pendant through the plastic. He thought of Naomi clutching it the way kids grab a cross or a rabbit's foot. She'd carried hope into that park, and he hadn't been there to pull her out. On the drive home, Clara turned on him with the sharpness of a knife. "You should have walked with her that day." His chest clenched. "Ma, don't what? Don't speak what's true. You had time, Darius. You had time to carry her bag, to walk beside her, but you let her go alone." He gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles whitened. "I offered. She said no. She wanted to breathe without me hanging over her shoulder." "You're the brother," Clara said coldly. "Your job ain't to listen when she says no. Your job is to know the world doesn't give girls like her second chances." Her words carved deep. For years he had told himself it wasn't his fault, that Naomi was her own person, that the police hadn't done their job. But here was his mother, cutting through the excuses with grief sharpened into blame. "Don't put this all on me," he said finally, voice low. "The cops wrote her off 'cause she was a black girl from Edmondson Avenue. They moved slower for us. If her name was Caroline Whitman or Lisa fucking O'Malley from Roland Park, there'd have been helicopters by sunset. That's who failed her, not me." Clara's lips pressed thin. "Maybe it's both." The words sat between them like broken glass. Roland, in the passenger seat, didn't speak. But his eyes in the rearview were steady, the kind of eyes that had heard this before: mothers blaming sons, sons blaming themselves, systems failing everyone in between. When they pulled up to the row house, Clara wouldn't get out right away. She sat there, hands on her cane. "If they killed her," she said, "if someone took her life, I want their name spoken in a courtroom. I want to hear the sentence." "Promise me, Darius," he nodded, throat tight. "I promise." She finally stepped out, leaving the door wide. Rain had stopped, but the air smelled like wet pavement and rust. Roland turned to him. "You carry a lot," he said quietly. "Yeah," Darius exhaled, and it just doubled. The detective studied him for a beat. "Guilt's heavy. Don't let it bury you before the truth does." Darius didn't answer. He only watched his mother shuffle up the steps, her silhouette framed by the porch light. He thought about how grief could twist love into accusation, and how blame was just another way of holding on to the dead. But he also thought of Naomi's journal, waiting in a plastic sleeve. Her words, her voice, might still be there, buried under dirt and years. And if her words pointed to someone, Darius swore he would find them, even if the truth burned what was left of his family. The next morning, Darius sat in the cramped, paper-stuffed office of Detective Ethan Roland at the Baltimore Police Headquarters. The walls were lined with file cabinets that seemed older than the detective himself, and the blinds let in strips of weak sunlight, cutting the room into shadows. A tired pot of coffee burned in the corner, half-empty styrofoam cups scattered around like spent shells. Roland slid a manila folder across the desk. The words COLEMAN NAOMI 2002 were stamped across the front, the ink faded but still sharp enough to hurt. "This," Roland said, tapping the folder, "is what 23 years of your sister's life boiled down to in our system. 15 pages, 2 Polaroids, and a stack of interviews that never went anywhere." Darius didn't touch it right away. He sat back, arms crossed, staring at the folder like it was a snake ready to strike. 15 pages, that's all she was worth to y'all. Roland didn't flinch. "To the department back then, yes. To me, no. That's why we're sitting here." Finally, Darius reached out and opened the file. The first page was the missing persons report, typed in stiff language. Female, African American, 23, last seen wearing white shirt, jeans, silver pendant. The words looked lifeless, stripped of the fire that had been Naomi. He flipped through the rest, notes scribbled in margins by different officers, possibly left town. Boyfriend, depression, check credit card activity. Every assumption written there cut deeper than the last. They didn't believe she was in danger, Darius muttered. They thought she just ran off. Roland leaned forward, voice low. I've seen this pattern more times than I can count. Black women disappear in this city, and the file gets thinner by the day. Meanwhile, a white girl goes missing in Leakin Park, and they bring out helicopters before midnight. That's the truth. Ugly, but truth. Darius slammed the folder shut. So what, we supposed to just accept that? My sister's bones sat in Leakin Park for 2 decades, cause she didn't fit the right profile. The detective let the silence stretch, then said, I'm not asking you to accept it. I'm asking you to help me change it, starting with her. Darius stared at him, chest heaving. He wanted to believe Roland, but the badge on his chest carried too much history. Roland opened another folder from his drawer, this one newer. 2 weeks before Naomi disappeared, a witness reported seeing her arguing with a young man in the park, said he was white, well-dressed. Witness described him as like he just stepped out of a magazine. But the lead wasn't followed. Want to know why? Darius's eyes narrowed. Tell me. Because the young man's name was Vincent Hale. The name hung heavy in the room like smoke. Darius clenched his fists. I knew it. I knew that boy had something to do with it. Naomi wrote his initials down on a receipt that same day, VH. She told her friend he wouldn't leave her alone, and the cops just ignored it. Roland flipped to a page in the old file, showing a note. Vincent Hale questioned, father influential donor, no further action. They let it die right there, Roland said. Darius pushed back from the desk so hard the chair squealed. You're telling me a rich kid harasses my sister, she vanishes, and they let him walk cause his daddy had money in the mayor's pocket. Roland didn't argue. He only said, yes. Darius paced the room, breathing hard. And now that same family runs half the development projects in this city. New condos, new stadium money, political donations. They build monuments on the bones they buried. He turned on Roland, eyes burning. What are you gonna do? You gonna actually go after him this time, or you just showing me this so I can stew in it? Roland stayed calm. I'm reopening the case formally. That means new interviews, new evidence review, and yes, Vincent Hale is at the top of my list, but I need you steady, Coleman. If you walk into this half-cocked, you'll give them exactly what they want, a way to discredit you. You understand? Darius dropped into the chair again, rubbing his face. His hands shook. Steady, he muttered. You asking me to be steady while I'm staring at 23 years of my sister rotting under dirt because some punk's last name kept him clean. Roland's voice softened. I'm asking you to be smart. If we play this right, we don't just bring the truth out, we tear down the wall that kept it hidden. Darius looked up, meeting his eyes. For the first time he saw not just a detective, but a man who had carried other families' grief. Roland wasn't promising miracles, he was promising a fight. Fine, Darius said finally, jaw tight. But hear me, if that man had anything to do with Naomi's death, I don't care what courtroom it takes. I want the world to know his name. I want him stripped bare. Roland nodded once. Then we'll start with the file. Piece by piece, we'll take it apart until there's nowhere left for him to hide. As Darius left the office, file tucked under his arm, he caught sight of the photo board in the hallway, faces of the missing still unsolved. Girls with bright eyes, boys with awkward smiles, mothers, fathers. It was a wall of ghosts. He pressed his hand to the file against his chest, whispering under his breath, Naomi, I got you now. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The fight wouldn't just be against Vincent Hale. It would be against the weight of an entire city that had decided long ago who was worth saving and who was not. 2 days later, Roland parked his sedan in front of a faded corner bar off Pennsylvania Avenue, the kind of place where the neon sign for light beer hadn't worked right in 10 years. Inside, the air was thick with fried food and stale cigarette smoke. A few old-timers hunched over the bar, arguing about lottery numbers. Darius sat in the booth closest to the wall, staring into a sweating glass of Coke. He wasn't drinking alcohol, his head needed to stay sharp. He'd asked Roland to bring him to this neighborhood because people here remembered things the cops didn't bother writing down. Roland slid in across from him, a notebook in hand. "You sure about this?" Darius smirked bitterly. "Detective, I've been sure since the night Naomi didn't come home." The first person they spoke with was Miss Etta, a 70-year-old retired school aide who'd known the Coleman kids since they were little. She adjusted her thick glasses, leaning forward. Naomi was a firecracker, smart as a whip. She used to stop by my stoop after her walks, tell me about the books she was reading. I remember that summer, she said some rich boy had been bothering her. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Darius's chest tightened. "You remember his name?" Etta pursed her lips. Vincent Hale came sniffing around that community meeting. Tall, smooth talker, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. The kind of boy who's used to hearing yes before he even asks the question. Roland scribbled quickly. "Did she say how serious it got?" "She said he scared her," Etta said plainly. "And Naomi wasn't the type to scare easy. She told me once, if he touches me again, I'm filing a report. Next thing I know, she's gone." Darius's fists curled against the table, and they still buried that lead. Etta shook her head. "Child, you know how this city runs. That family's money is in everybody's pocket." Folks warned Naomi to stay quiet, but she wasn't built for silence. Roland leaned forward. "Etta, would you put that on record now?" She hesitated, glancing at Darius. "If I do, that man's people will make my life hell, but Naomi deserves somebody telling the truth. I'll do it." By the time they left the bar, Darius's emotions were a storm. Every word Etta spoke confirmed what he already knew in his bones. Vincent Hale had been circling his sister like a predator. Later that evening, Darius stood outside Hale Development's gleaming downtown headquarters. The glass doors reflected his face back at him, tired and hard. Inside, marble floors and a receptionist with a practiced smile made it feel like another world entirely, one Naomi never would have belonged to. He asked for Vincent Hale. The receptionist's tone turned sharp. "Do you have an appointment?" "Tell him it's about Naomi Coleman," Darius said. Minutes later, Vincent Hale himself appeared. At 44, he looked polished, hair cut with the kind of precision that cost more than most folks' rent. His tailored suit hugged a body that had never missed a gym session. Vincent looked Darius up and down, smirking. "Mr. Coleman, is it? I've heard about you." "Yeah," Darius said. "You heard I'm the man whose sister vanished after you wouldn't leave her alone." The receptionist stiffened. Vincent raised a hand, dismissing her. He leaned in close, voice smooth. "You think you can walk into my office, throw around accusations from 20 years ago and ruin my career, my name? You don't know who you're talking to." "I know exactly who I'm talking to," Darius shot back. "You're the last man seen with Naomi. Witnesses remember you arguing with her at the park." "You think money's gonna hide that forever?" Vincent chuckled, low and cold. "Witnesses, please. People remember whatever they're told to remember. You're grasping at ghosts, Mr. Coleman. You fix cars, I build cities. We're not in the same leg." Darius's jaw tightened. "You laid a hand on her, didn't you?" For the first time, Vincent's smirk faltered, just a flicker. Then it returned, sharper. "Careful, Coleman. You're standing in a building my family owns, in a city my family built. You push too hard and you'll find doors closing in your face, jobs, banks, lawyers, everything." Darius took a step closer, his voice a growl. "I already had doors slammed in my face my whole damn life. What else you got to threaten me with? You think I'm scared of losing what little I got left?" Security appeared at the corner, hands near their radios. Vincent leaned back, spreading his arms like a king in his castle. "Escort Mr. Coleman out. He's lost his way." As they dragged him toward the door, Darius shouted, "You can hide behind your money, but I'm not stopping. Naomi's voice is louder than your damn bank account." The receptionist's eyes darted nervously, while Vincent's smirk never wavered. Outside on the street, Roland was waiting, leaning against his car. "I told you not to confront him." Darius's chest heaved. "I needed to look him in the eye. Needed to see if the devil flinched." And He did, Darius said. For a second, Roland sighed. That family's been insulated by wealth for decades, but a flinch is something. Now we need proof, something that cracks his armor wide open. Darius shook his head. Detective, I don't want just proof. I want the world to see him the way I do. Spoiled, violent, and protected by the same system that buried Naomi's file under 15 worthless pages. Roland put a hand on his shoulder. Then you better be ready for war, Coleman, because once we go after Vincent Hale, he'll use every dollar, every friend in high places to bury you too. Darius looked back up at the shining glass tower, the name Hale lit in gold above the doors. He thought of Naomi's crooked pendant, dull and scratched, lying in a morgue tray. I don't care how deep he tries to bury me, Darius said. I'll still rise up and drag him down with me. Roland nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. Then let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. 3 days after Darius's confrontation with Vincent Hale, Roland drove him out toward the edge of Gwyn's Falls Leakin Park, where the remains had been discovered. The late afternoon sun filtered through the thick canopy, painting the woods in gold and shadow. But beneath that beauty hung a chill, the kind of stillness that carried memory. The two men climbed out of the car, boots crunching on damp leaves. Crime scene tape fluttered like a warning around a cluster of trees. Darius paused at the edge, throat tight. This is it, he asked. Roland nodded. 2 hikers found the remains about 30 yards in. The journal and pendant were close by. Darius stepped under the tape. His chest felt heavy with every step deeper into the woods. He stopped where a patch of earth had been disturbed, marked by orange flags. His jaw tightened. This where she fell? Roland shook his head. We can't say for certain, but this is where she was left. Darius knelt, pressing his palm against the dirt as if it might still carry warmth. His voice was low, almost to himself. Naomi, I'm here. The silence answered. Roland pulled out a small evidence bag from his pocket. I wasn't supposed to show you this yet, but I think you need to see it. Inside was a silver Zippo lighter, tarnished, initials engraved into the side. V.H. Darius's heart slammed against his ribs. Vincent Hale, he whispered. Matches the description, Roland said. Lighter was buried under leaves about 5 feet from where the journal was found. Darius shot to his feet. That's it, that's the proof, that's his damn signature. What more do you need? Roland's tone was calm but firm. It's not enough on its own. His lawyer will say it was stolen, lost, planted. Without a witness or forensic evidence linking him directly, it's circumstantial. Darius's anger surged. Circumstantial. That lighter was next to my sister's body. What the hell else you need? His initials carved into her bones. Roland didn't answer right away. He let Darius's words echo through the trees. Then he said, I get it, believe me, but I've been in courtrooms where truth wasn't enough. Evidence has to walk and talk on its own, or men like Vincent walk free. Darius turned away, fists clenched, staring into the shadows. He saw Naomi's face, remembered her telling him that Hale boy wouldn't stop bothering her. Now her body lay in dirt while Vincent sat in a glass tower downtown, smiling for cameras. His phone buzzed. A message from Clara. Where are you? You promised me answers. He didn't reply. He couldn't tell her yet. Not until Hale's mask came all the way off. Roland walked closer. There's something else you need to know. The autopsy confirmed blunt force trauma to the skull. She didn't just collapse out here. Someone struck her. Darius's knees nearly gave. He steadied himself on a tree. His voice cracked. He killed her, and they let him live like nothing happened. Roland's jaw tightened. That's what it looks like, but again, looks don't win cases. We need more. That night back at his row house, Darius sat at the kitchen table with Nia, Naomi's old friend who had insisted on coming over after hearing about the remains. You saw him, didn't you? She asked. Vincent Hale. Yeah. Naomi told me he cornered her outside the library one time, tried to get her number. She said he grabbed her wrist when she walked away. She told him, I'm not one of your projects, you don't own me. He didn't like that. Darius's jaw flexed. Sounds like him. Nia lined in. I kept quiet all these years because, well, who was gonna believe a girl from Park Heights over a Hale? But if you're reopening this, I'll talk. I'll put it on record. Darius looked at her, tears burning behind his eyes. You sure? His family will come for you. They'll make it hell. Nia straightened her shoulders. Naomi deserves the truth. I'm not hiding anymore. 2 nights later, Darius couldn't sleep. He drove back to the park alone, parking under the broken streetlight. The woods looked different at night, thick with shadows that twisted into shapes. Every crack of a branch made his pulse spike. He walked to the spot again, flashlight in hand, and then he saw it, half buried near a log, something metal glinting. He crouched, brushing dirt away, and pulled out a small bracelet, cheap, beaded, broken at the clasp. He knew it instantly. Naomi had worn it to their cousin's graduation. Darius's chest ached. He sank onto the ground, clutching the bracelet. I should have been here. I should have walked with you. Behind him, the woods groaned with wind, but he thought he heard something else. 2 footsteps. He swung the flashlight around. Nothing, just trees. Still, the hair rose on the back of his neck. Someone had been there, maybe still was. He rushed back to the car, locking the doors, breathing hard. He dialed Roland. Detective, I found something else. But listen, someone's watching that site. I swear it. Roland's voice was sharp now. Don't go back alone again, you hear me? That ground isn't just a grave, it's a battlefield, and Hale, or whoever he paid, knows we're digging. Darius gripped the bracelet, shaking. Good, let them know, 'cause I'm not stopping. As he hung up, he looked back toward the woods, the shadows swallowing the trail. For the first time, he realized this wasn't just about evidence anymore. It was about survival. Naomi's death wasn't a secret accident. It was an act someone wanted buried forever. And Darius had just kicked the dirt off the grave. The following week, Roland arranged a formal sit-down with Vincent Hale. It was supposed to be by the book, detective, suspect, quiet conference room at headquarters. But Vincent's attorney stalled, demanded rescheduling, then pushed the whole thing into pending. Darius had had enough of waiting, so he drove himself downtown to the newest jewel of the Hale Empire, a glass-walled luxury condo tower in Harbor East. The lobby was marble and steel, brushed so clean it looked untouchable. The doorman, white gloves, crisp suit, watched Darius enter with a look that said, "You don't belong here." "I'm here for Vincent Hale," Darius said flatly. The man hesitated. "Sir, do you?" "Tell him it's about Naomi Coleman." The doorman's eyes flickered. He picked up the phone. Minutes later, Vincent appeared, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. He looked every inch the candidate for city council he was rumored to be. Tailored navy suit, American flag pin on the lapel, smile rehearsed for cameras. "Mr. Coleman," he said smoothly, walking forward, "I thought we'd already spoken. Why are you making a scene?" Darius's voice was low but dangerous. "Because my sister's bones just came out of the dirt while you're out here shaking hands for votes." Vincent's smirk twitched. "You're grieving, I understand, but slander won't help you heal. You put your hands on her." Darius stepped closer, ignoring the bodyguard's movements. "Witnesses saw you arguing with her. They heard her tell you no, and now she's gone. That ain't slander, that's truth." The lobby's quiet luxury hummed with tension. A couple in gym clothes walked past, pretending not to hear. Vincent tilted his head. "Naomi Coleman was passionate, stubborn. I tried to help her once. She mistook kindness for something else." Darius's fists curled. "Kindness, you stalked her, you scared her, and when she stood up to you, she disappeared." Vincent's smile sharpened, snake-like. "Careful, Coleman, you don't know how power works. My family employs half the contractors in this city. Judges owe us favors, banks take our calls before they take yours. You want to dig around in ghosts, fine, but if you come for me, you'll find yourself buried right next to her." Darius leaned in so close their foreheads almost touched. "You think your money makes you untouchable, but I'll drag your name through every street in Baltimore until the dirt clings to you like it clung to her." For the first time, Vincent's mask cracked, his jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "Get him out of here." The bodyguards moved in, grabbing Darius's arms. He didn't resist. He wanted Vincent to hear his words clear. "You hear me, Hale? You don't scare me. Not you, not your daddy's money, not this damn tower. I'm not stopping." They shoved him out onto the sidewalk. Passers-by stared. Some shook their heads, others looked away quickly. The Hale family had long ago bought silence. Darius stood there, chest heaving, watching Vincent disappear back into his palace. That night, Clara exploded when she heard what had happened. "You went to his building," she cried, slamming her cane on the kitchen floor. Are you trying to get yourself killed? That man's got more lawyers than the city's got churches. He's guilty, Ma, Darius said, pacing. He knows it. I saw it in his face. Seeing it in his face won't put him in prison, Clara snapped. You think a poor black man yelling in some rich lobby is justice? It's suicide. Darius slammed his fist on the table. What you want me to do? Sit quiet like they expect us to? Let him smile on TV while Naomi lies in a box. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I want you alive. I already lost one child. I can't lose another. The word struck like a blade. Darius sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. For a moment, the kitchen was filled only with the sound of Clara's uneven breathing. Then she said softly, Naomi believed in fighting smart. Don't you shame her memory by fighting foolish. The next day, Roland confronted Darius outside the auto shop. You stormed Hale's lobby, Roland asked, his tone sharp. Do you realize you just handed his lawyers a gift? They'll call you unstable, say you're harassing a respectable businessman. He's no businessman, Darius growled. He's a killer, maybe, Roland said, holding his gaze, but the law needs more than maybe. You want justice or revenge, because if it's justice, you've got to let me build the case. If it's revenge, you're on your own, and you'll end up behind bars before he ever does. Darius's chest heaved. So what, I just sit on my hands while he lives good? No, Roland said quietly. You stand tall, but you let the truth carry the weight. Trust me, Coleman, Hale's armor isn't as bulletproof as he thinks, but you can't be the crack yourself. We need evidence to do the breaking. Darius looked away, fists trembling. Every instinct in him screamed to keep pushing, to tear Vincent apart with his bare hands if he had to. But Naomi's face, her laughter, her fire rose in his mind. She hadn't fought recklessly, she fought with conviction. He exhaled, slow and hard. Fine, build your case, but I swear, Roland, if you slip, if they bury this again, I'll dig him out myself. Roland nodded grimly. Then let's make sure it never gets buried again. That night, Darius stood on the roof of his row house, staring out at the city lights. Towers rose in the distance, symbols of power built on the backs of people like Naomi. For years, he had carried his sister's absence like a wound. Now he carried her fight. And for the first time he understood this wasn't just about Naomi. It was about every poor black girl whose file had been tossed in a drawer while the city bowed to money and names. Vincent Hale had power. But Darius had something else, truth sharpened by grief, and he was ready to use it. Roland called early one morning, his voice carrying something different, something alive. Coleman, he said, I think we've got a break. You need to meet me. They met at a small diner on Reisterstown Road, the kind with red vinyl booths and a waitress who called everybody Hun. The place smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee, familiar enough to steady Darius's nerves. Roland was already in a booth, his notepad closed in front of him like it was guarding something important. Across from him sat a woman Darius hadn't seen in years. She was maybe in her late 60s now, her face lined but strong, her eyes cautious. She stirred a cup of tea with a trembling hand. Darius, Roland said, this is Marjorie Ellis. She used to work for the Hale family. Marjorie looked up at him. I knew your sister, she said softly. Not well, but I saw her speak her mind at one of those neighborhood meetings, fire in her voice. Darius slid into the booth, studying her. What's this about? Marjorie took a shaky breath. I've been carrying something a long time. Something I should have said 20 years ago. Her words tightened Darius's chest. Then say it now. She glanced at Roland, who gave a small nod, then she looked back at Darius. The night Naomi went missing, Vincent came home late, past midnight. His shirt was torn, his knuckles bruised. I asked if he was all right, and he snapped at me to mind my business. But I saw it, his clothes were smeared with dirt, and there was blood on his collar. Darius's jaw clenched. You're just now telling me this. Marjorie's voice cracked. I wanted to then. But the next morning, Mr. Hale's lawyer called me into the office. They said if I ever repeated what I saw, I'd lose my job, my pension, my house. And Darius, I was raising 2 grandbabies at the time. I didn't have a choice. You always got a choice, Darius snapped, slamming his hand on the table. Heads turned in the diner. Roland reached across, steadying him. Coleman, Marjorie's eyes welled with tears. I know, and I've hated myself for it every day. but when I saw the news about Naomi's remains being found, I couldn't carry it anymore. That girl deserves the truth. For a moment the booth was heavy with silence, then Darius leaned forward, voice low but sharp. You watched them bury her twice, once in the dirt and once in silence. Marjorie nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. You're right, but I'm here now. I'll testify. I'll swear it in court, whatever it takes. Roland opened his notepad, his voice brisk now. We'll get a formal statement and we'll protect you. This is the first solid witness tying Vincent to that night. Darius's eyes burned as he looked at Marjorie. If you're serious, then do it. Don't let them scare you this time. She met his gaze. I won't. Later, outside the diner, Darius paced on the sidewalk, fists balled in his pockets. Roland leaned against his car, watching him. She's telling the truth, Roland said. I know, Darius muttered, but I can't shake it. If she'd talked then, Naomi's case wouldn't have gone cold. My mother wouldn't have spent 23 years lighting candles at a grave that didn't exist. And me, I wouldn't have spent half my life hating the mirror for what I didn't do. Roland's tone softened. Guilt's a disease, Coleman. It'll eat you if you let it. Marjorie's guilt is hers to carry. Yours is different, but neither one changes the fact that we've got something real now. Darius stopped pacing. So what happens next? Roland's jaw tightened. Next, we put pressure where it hurts. The Hales have kept people silent with money and threats, but with Marjorie's testimony and the lighter, we've got leverage. If we push right, someone else will break. That evening, Darius visited his mother. Clara was sitting at the kitchen table, Bible open, glasses perched low on her nose. You look tired, she said, not glancing up. I got news, Darius said, sitting across from her. A woman came forward. She worked for the Hales. Said she saw Vincent come home that night, bruised, dirty, blood on his shirt. Clara closed her eyes, whispering something that might have been a prayer. Then she looked at him. She's telling this now, after all these years. Yeah, Darius said bitterly. Now when the city's forgotten Naomi, when Vincent's out here playing politician. Clara's face hardened. God sees what people hide, but people, they'll only see if you shine the light in their eyes. Don't let that woman's delay turn you bitter, Darius. Let it fuel you. He rubbed his temples. Ma, I don't know if I got enough fuel left. She reached across, laying her frail hand over his. Then used Naomi's. She was never afraid of rich men with empty souls. Don't you be either. 2 days later, Roland called again. Coleman, it's happening. We're reopening the case officially. Marjorie's testimony gave us the green light. Darius gripped the phone. His pulse thudded like a drum. Finally, the silence was breaking, but he also knew the storm was just beginning. Because men like Vincent Hale didn't sit still when the truth came knocking. They crushed it, bought it, buried it. This time, though, Darius swore the truth would not go quietly. The Baltimore City courthouse was buzzing like a hornet's nest. News vans lined the street. Cameras crowding the steps, anchors speaking into microphones about the reopening of the infamous Naomi Coleman case. For the first time in 23 years, the system that had failed her was being forced to speak her name. Darius stood just outside the courtroom doors, his suit jacket hanging stiff on shoulders not used to this kind of fabric. His palms sweated, his pulse thrummed. He glanced at his mother, Clara, who sat in a wheelchair now, Bible folded in her lap. She squeezed his hand. You tell them, she whispered. You tell the world my baby mattered. Inside, the courtroom filled with a mix of spectators, community activists, old neighbors from Edmondson Avenue, curious law students, and reporters scribbling as if justice could be contained in their notes. At the front, Vincent Hale sat with his attorneys, tailored in charcoal gray, hair slicked back. His jaw was set in arrogance, but his eyes flickered whenever the cameras flashed. He looked less like a confident businessman now, more like a cornered animal in an expensive suit. The judge, a stern black woman with sharp eyes named Judge Marlene Whitfield, rapped her gavel. This hearing is to determine whether charges of homicide and obstruction can proceed against Vincent Hale in connection with the death of Naomi Coleman. Detective Roland, you may present your case. Roland stood tall, presenting evidence piece by piece. The pendant, the journal, the lighter with VH engraved, and finally Marjorie Ellis's sworn testimony. Marjorie took the stand, her voice shaking but clear. That night he came home bruised, dirty, with blood on his shirt. I was told to keep quiet, threatened with losing everything, but I can't stay quiet no more. That girl deserves the truth. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Darius sat forward, eyes burning. Vincent's lawyer, a slick man named Gerald Kane, stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Ellis, Kane said smoothly, you admit you stayed silent for over 20 years. Why should this court believe you now? Marjorie's chin trembled, but she didn't flinch. Because lies are heavy. I carried M too long. I ain't dying with them still on my back. Kane sneered. Or perhaps you're being pressured, coached by Detective Rowland, or maybe compensated. Marjorie's voice broke, but she forced it steady. The only payment I want is for Naomi Coleman's name to stop being a whisper. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Judge Whitfield banged her gavel for silence. Then it was Darius's turn. He hadn't planned to speak, but Rowland leaned close. The jury needs her brother's voice. They need to see what money can't buy. Darius walked to the stand, heart pounding. The oath felt heavy in his mouth. He sat, facing both the judge and Vincent Hale. Mr. Coleman, Kane began, you've made quite a scene over the years, storming my client's building, shouting accusations. Isn't it true that your grief has clouded your judgment, that you see monsters in every shadow because you refuse to accept your sister may have simply been a victim of circumstance? Darius leaned forward, eyes burning. Victim of circumstance. My sister was followed, harassed, and silenced. She told people his name. She wrote his initials down, and when she stood up to him, she disappeared. Kane smirked, but you have no proof tying my client directly to her death, do you? Darius's voice cracked with rage and grief. Her bones are proof. Her blood on his shirt was proof. And the way he smirks while I sit here telling you about my baby sister, that's proof enough for anyone with a soul. The courtroom fell silent. Every eye turned to Vincent, and for the first time the smirk faltered. Judge Whitfield cleared her throat. Mr. Hale, you will remain silent unless called. But Vincent couldn't help himself. He leaned forward, voice sharp. This is ridiculous. You think I'd throw away my future for some? He caught himself, but the word hung heavy, unspoken, poisoned. Some girl from Edmondson Avenue. The gallery gasped. Clara let out a cry, her cane clattering to the floor. Rowland's eyes widened. Even Judge Whitfield froze for a moment before regaining control. Mr. Hale, she said icily, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt. But the damage was done. The mask had cracked. Vincent Hale had shown his disdain, the entitlement that had shielded him all these years. Darius seized the moment, standing from the witness box. His voice rang through the courtroom. She wasn't some girl, she was Naomi Coleman. She was my sister. She had dreams bigger than this city could hold. And you all decided she wasn't worth the fight because she didn't have money, because she didn't have a name carved in marble downtown. But let me tell you, her name is carved now, in every one of us who refuses to let her be forgotten. The courtroom erupted, half in applause, half in shouts. The judge hammered her gavel, demanding order, but the electricity couldn't be contained. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled furiously. Vincent's lawyers huddled, whispering urgently. His face was pale, jaw clenched. For the first time he looked small, just another man whose wealth couldn't silence truth forever. Judge Whitfield raised her gavel once more. Based on the testimony and evidence presented, this court finds sufficient cause to proceed with formal charges. Vincent Hale, you are hereby remanded pending trial for the murder of Naomi Coleman. The gallery erupted again, louder, unstoppable. Clara wept openly, whispering, "Thank you, Lord, thank you." Darius sat, trembling, tears in his eyes. For years, Naomi had been just a missing flyer, a whispered rumor. Now her name thundered through the courthouse like justice itself. But as Rowland leaned in, his voice was grave. "Coleman, this was just the hearing. The trial's coming. Hale's family will fight with everything they've got. You ready for that?" Darius wiped his eyes, staring at Vincent being led away in cuffs. "I've been ready for 23 years, and for the first time he believed it. The trial dragged for months. Vincent Hale's lawyers threw everything at the wall, claims of coerced testimony, motions to dismiss character assassination of Naomi herself. They tried to paint her as reckless, unstable, a young woman who may have wandered into danger of her own making. Each time those words were spoken in court, Darius felt like the air was being ripped from his lungs. He clenched his fists under the table, whispering to himself, "Hold it together. Don't let them bury her again." Roland sat beside him during every hearing. "They're desperate," the detective murmured. "When they start smearing the victim, it means the evidence is cutting too close." But the Hales had money, and money made everything slippery. Witnesses who once seemed willing suddenly backed out, saying they were afraid for their families. A lab tech admitted his house had been vandalized. Even Marjorie received anonymous calls late at night, whispering, "Shut your mouth or else." One evening after court, Darius sat at his mother's kitchen table. Clara stirred tea with slow, deliberate motions. "They're trying to kill her twice," Darius said, his voice hoarse. "Once in the woods and now in the courtroom." Clara fixed him with steady eyes. "Then you speak for her, loud enough they can't silence both of you." The climax came during the final week of trial. Vincent Hale himself took the stand. His lawyers had insisted he needed to appear confident, sympathetic. At first he performed well, polished voice, steady answers, denying everything with practiced calm. But then the prosecutor pulled out Naomi's journal. The courtroom went still as he read the last entry aloud. "VH again today. Said he could make life easier for me if I played along. Told him no. Told him I won't be bought." He smiled like he already owned me. "I'll keep saying no until my voice gives out." A murmur swept the gallery. Darius felt his throat close. That was Naomi, clear, unshaken, standing tall even in ink. The prosecutor lined in. "Mr. Hale, do you deny you spoke to Naomi Coleman in the days before her disappearance?" Vincent's composure cracked. He shifted in his seat. I might have spoken to her at community events, but nothing improper." The prosecutor pressed. "Improper? Witnesses say she told you no repeatedly. Witnesses say you followed her, that you harassed her." Vincent snapped. "She misunderstood me. She was stubborn. She didn't know her place." Gasps filled the room. Cameras flashed. The words hung in the air like poison. Judge Whitfield's gavel slammed. "Order, order," but it was too late. The mask was gone. Vincent Hale had revealed himself arrogant, entitled, dismissive of the very life he was accused of stealing. The verdict came 2 days later. Guilty of manslaughter, guilty of obstruction. Not the full measure Darius had hoped for, but enough to shatter the myth of the untouchable Hale family. Reporters swarmed the steps of the courthouse. Headlines ran the next morning. Prominent developer's son convicted in 23-year-old cold case. Naomi Coleman's voice heard at last. Community members lit candles in Naomi's honor, lining the streets of Edmondson Avenue. For once, her name wasn't a whisper, it was a rallying cry. Weeks later, Darius stood at Naomi's new grave, the headstone carved with care. "Naomielisecolema in 1979, 2002, she said no, and it was enough." Clara sat beside him, her hand resting gently on the stone. "She's home now," she whispered. Darius knelt, pressing his palm against the cold granite. His voice cracked. "I should have walked with you that day, sis, but I swear to you I walked every mile since. And I'll keep walking." Roland joined them quietly. He laid a single white rose on the grave. "Justice doesn't always feel clean," he said softly. "But this one, it's as close as we get." Darius nodded, eyes wet. "It ain't just about her anymore. It's about every girl they said wasn't worth the time, every mother left with nothing but a flyer." Naomi stood for them too. Clara closed her eyes. "The rich think their names protect them, but stone outlasts gold. Her name will be here long after his fades." That night, Darius returned home and hung Naomi's pendant in a frame above the mantel. He sat back, staring at it. The world had tried to define her as poor, black, disposable, but her story had forced the city to look at itself, and the reflection wasn't pretty. Darius whispered into the stillness. "They judged her by her zip code. They judged me by my skin, but truth don't care about their judgment. Truth speaks louder." He thought of Vincent Hale, once untouchable, now locked in a cell. He thought of the jurors who had listened, of Marjorie's trembling voice, of his mother's unyielding prayers. Naomi's fight had been carved into all of them. For years, Darius had carried guilt like a chain. Now, standing in the dim glow of his row house, he realized the chain wasn't just his. It belonged to a system that measured lives by wealth and pedigree. And by breaking it, Naomi's story became more than tragedy. It became a warning etched in stone to a city and a country that too often judged a book by its cover. "Rest now, sis," Darius murmured. "Your voice is loud enough for both of us."